So there's this trend in Korea called rosé tteokbokki, which is basically your normal tteokbokki, spicy rice cakes, with a cream sauce that makes it into this pale pink color instead of the deep foreboding red. And I said to myself, what if we made that using only Italian ingredients? So today I'll be swapping the duck for gnocchi and making rosé gnocchi bokki. So for gnocchi, of course, the first thing we need to do is boil some potatoes. I've got about 500 grams or 3 medium-sized red potatoes here that I'm going to bring to a boil in cold water. I'll let those go for about 20 or 30 minutes until a knife easily pierces through the middle. Strain them out. And they're easier to peel once they're boiled, but they're still extremely hot, so I'm going to throw on some gloves. And all you gotta do is just squeeze them a little bit and the skin comes right off. Nice and easy. Once those are all peeled, I'm gonna mash them up. Couldn't find my potato ricer, which would have been a much better tool for this. You really don't want lumpy potatoes in your gnocchi. Or maybe you do, I don't know. Maybe you want some chunky style gnocchi. Anyway, I'll mash those until they're as smooth as I can get them. Then I'll go ahead and season everything with some salt. Then I added in about 150 grams of flour. As well as half a cracked egg. The recipes I was following called for a kilo of potatoes, so a full egg would have worked with that recipe. But a kilo of potatoes is a lot of potatoes, and it's going to make a lot of gnocchi. And I don't have a large family to feed. So I'll just start kneading that until all the flour is absorbed. And this was super sticky, so I just kept adding flour until it sort of came together into something that was manageable, but it never really stopped being sticky, so really you just gotta dust your work surface as thoroughly as possible so that you have an easier time rolling things out. I rolled a bit of the dough into a long snake, about 1.5 to 2 centimeters thick. And for this dish, I really want to replicate the experience of tteokbokki, so I'm going to cut my gnocchi pretty long into about the size of the rice cakes that you'd be using for tteokbokki. Next up, I'll season some water with salt, bring it up to a rolling boil, and then drop in the gnocchi. Now, these kind of lost their shape as they were boiling and as I was stirring them around to prevent them from sticking to the bottom, but that's all right. It'll be rustic, I guess you could say. Either way, you only need to go for about 4 or 5 minutes on these, really just until they float to the surface. And at this point, we can set them aside and start working on the rest of the dish. So into a large sauté pan over medium heat, throw a couple tablespoons of oil, about 30 mils. I'm going to smash and peel some garlic. I don't really want to mince or slice the garlic here because I don't want pieces of garlic floating around in my sauce. I want it to be a nice, creamy, smooth sauce. So I'll just add in the garlic, mostly intact. Next, I've got 1/4 of an onion that I'm going to peel and thinly slice. And add that in. I'll saute those for a few minutes until the onions turn translucent and you get a nice onion and garlic aroma filling the house. Next up, a few of the tteokbokki recipes called for bacon. Instead of bacon, I'm going to use some pancetta that I'll cut into 1/2 centimeter dice before tossing those in with the garlic and onions. I'll let those fry for a little bit. And a few of the recipes called for mini sausages, which is really kind of just like little hot dogs. Now, instead of that, I'm going to use some spicy Italian sausage. I got a thinner style of sausage here that should emulate those mini dogs pretty nicely. They were tied off at a longer length, so I just went ahead and pinched the middle and twisted them into shorter lengths. So now I've got mini Italian sausages. I want to brown those on all sides, so just keep rotating until you get color on every side. And now, of course, we need some heat to this dish, so I'm going to add in a few pinches of crushed red pepper. And in place of the gochujang, that red pepper paste that's ubiquitous in Korean cuisine and pretty much a necessity for tteokbokki, I'm going to use tomato paste. It's got similar flavor notes. It's got that deep umami from the tomatoes. It's got the slight acidity, and it's got a similar color. So I'll squeeze in about 4 tablespoons of that, about 60 mils. I'm gonna fry it for a few minutes just to develop a deeper flavor, cook off some of that raw tomato flavor. And once the oil turns red and bits start sticking to the bottom of the pan, I'm gonna boost the rosé-ness of this dish by deglazing with a splash of rosé Prosecco. Just a little bit, you don't want too much acidity in here to fight with the cream. I scraped up all the delicious little bits off the bottom of the pan, and then I went in with the cream. This is about 250 mils or a cup of cream. I'll mix it in thoroughly until the color changes to a nice rosé. And now that the sausages are mostly cooked and we're not going to risk losing any filling, I'll cut them into their individual links. Then I'll go ahead and season everything with some salt and freshly cracked black pepper. Give it a good stir to mix that in. And now I've got some broccoli. Now this isn't a very common addition to tteokbokki, but the cool peeps at Future Neighbor added some into theirs. I figured a little bit of greenery would be nice for this otherwise heavy dish. So I'm gonna cut just the florets off of the broccoli, and then I'll quickly blanch them in some salted boiling water for just about a minute or two, just until they turn bright green, at which point we will dump them into an ice bath to stop the cooking process. And add those into our sauce. All right, now I'll add in the gnocchi, which as you can see have kind of deformed a little bit, but hey, they're the same size as the sausage, so consistency in every bite is kind of a nice little touch. Another common addition to tteokbokki is fish cakes. And I was trying to think, what is a good substitute for fish cakes that would be used in the Italian pantry? Well, what about squid? At first I thought about slicing these into big sheets, just like the fish cake would be. But I don't know if that would have good mouthfeel or anything. I feel like that would be a little bit weird. So I just went with the traditional rings. And these don't need a lot of time to cook, so I just made sure that the sausages were fully cooked before adding them in. That way they don't get too rubbery. Alright, finally, one common addition to tteokbokki is a slice of American cheese, and I feel like this is an essential ingredient. It just adds so much character, so much creaminess and cheesiness to the dish. But in this case, I'm going to be using Taleggio, which has a really interesting little bit of funkiness, and it's supremely melty. So I'm going to add in about 100 grams of that, as well as some freshly grated Parmesan to balance that out with a little bit of sharpness. I'll add some freshness by sprinkling in some chopped parsley. And we're ready to serve. So this looks really interesting. That lovely rosé color and all the different shapes and textures going on. You got the rings of calamari, you got the little broccoli florets. And flavor-wise, this is really, really good. I mean, adding in that rosé was absolutely clutch. The flavor that the alcohol brings to this cream sauce essentially makes it into a vodka sauce, although it's a red vodka sauce because of the tomatoes. But yeah, you get a little bit of smokiness from the pancetta, some umami, and some brightness from those tomatoes, and just the rich creaminess of the cream and the cheese. This is just an amazing dish. Things I would probably change: gnocchi doesn't really work in this long format. It's kind of weird to bite off a piece of gnocchi instead of just eating the whole thing. And if you're going to change that, then you kind of have to change the shape of the sausages to make them just little nuggets or meatballs. But overall, this is absolutely a delightful and entertaining dish, and I hope you guys give it a try.